Sergey Golovkin. Everyone who knew Sergey Golovkin claimed that he was a quiet, reserved person and did not understand how he could commit the murders. As a child, he was often sick and suffered attacks from his peers. He graduated from the Tymyr Agricultural Academy and worked as a livestock technician at the Moscow Stud Farm No. 1. He waylaid his first victim on the street and hanged him. A young man miraculously survived and later identified the maniac. But before that, Golovkin managed to kill 11 boys. He raped, beat and dismembered corpses in the forest or garage. There were 35 stab wounds on one of the bodies. After his arrest, Golovkin completely denied involvement in these brutal crimes. His cellmate was able to talk to him. Fisher was shot in 1996. How the silver medalist became a monster. Why the disciple Chikatilo was not saved by the moratorium on execution that came into force. Read in the book Maniac Fisher. The story of the last murderer executed in Russia by Elizaveta Buta. Larry Gene Bell. Bloodthirsty killers revel in their power over their victims. Sexual maniac Larry Gene Bell went further. It wasn't enough for him to kidnap, rape and kill two teenage girls. He terrorized their families over the phone and bombarded them with threatening letters. This ultimately helped to apprehend the killer. Investigators suspected his involvement into other disappearances in South Carolina, but Bell did not confess. He was caught again by John Douglas, who also stopped the cleaner Joseph Franklin and Dennis Rader, known as BTK. The legendary FBI profiler co-authored with Mark Olshaker the book, When a Killer Calls, about the capture of Larry Gene Bell. Karla Homolka and Paul Bernardo, the hosts of the Russian crime podcast show The Hills Have podcast called The Next Pair of Maniacs in Our Creepy Top List. Ken and Barbie. Judge for yourself. Paul was 6 years older than Karla. They were inseparable, got married at Niagara Falls, moved into a pink house, but Paul, long before meeting Karla, raped women, lying in wait for them right on the streets of the Canadian resort town of Scarborough. He has 18 attacks. Having met his future wife when she was still in school, he realized that they were the same. Proof: Karla drugged her own little sister and allowed Paul to rape her. The girl died on the way to the hospital. After that, they killed 2 more together. Tortures and reprisals were recorded on video. When Paul's lawyer saw them at the trial, he refused to defend this monster. The villain was identified through DNA analysis. Karla turned out to be more cunning and managed to hire a lawyer and present herself as a victim like the others. She was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Now she is a mother of 3 children, a teacher and a blogger. And this is the worst thing in history. Paul is still in prison. Listen to the story in more detail in the episode Killers Ken and Barbie by Tima and Valia Nazarov. John George A., the acid bath killer, for obvious reasons, did not leave any evidence. Thanks to his good manners and pleasant appearance, he easily gained the trust of decently dressed strangers. Then the swindler stunned them, robbed them, and sophisticatedly disposed of their bodies. They were able to catch him only because he himself wanted it and confessed. It is impossible to say that he had a difficult childhood, and that some terrible events affected his psyche. He was a late, only and dearly beloved son, which he took advantage of. From forging teacher signatures, he moved on to larger deceptions and then murders. You can listen in more detail to the episode London Vampire of the show The Diaries of Laura Palmer by Mikhail Lebedev and Masha Pogrebniak. Either way, the educated Haig took the idea of how to get rid of bodies from Oscar Wilde's novel, The Picture of Dorian Gray. Gennady Mosovich Gennady grew up in the family of an alcoholic who beat his wife in front of his child. The neighbors knew everything, and the boy's friends teased him. Self-doubt grew into sexual complexes, and after serving in the Navy, Mosovich began to kill. He committed his first crime at the age of 24. Then he broke up with his beloved and wanted to hang himself out of grief. Unfortunately, a young girl walked past and Mosovich changed his mind. Why should I bother about a woman? I'd rather strangle one myself. He strangled the first victim with his bare hands. Subsequently, he used clotheslines, scars and other means. At the same time, he not only lay in wait for the girls in quiet woods, but also lured voters into the car, a red Cossack, and a technical assistance vehicle. At the same time, Mosovich led an ordinary life. He worked as a car mechanic, got married, raised children, and even headed a people's squad. It was difficult to suspect him. In those years, it was not customary to talk about serial killers. They were considered a side effect of capitalism. For Mosovich crimes due to tampering with evidence, 14 innocent men were imprisoned, one was executed. The investigation was able to identify the real maniac based on his handwriting. He wrote a letter to the newspaper and left another next to one of the last victims. KGB graphologists had to analyze 556,000 handwritings. The killer was detained while trying to escape. He confessed to 43 murders, but managed to prove 36. The Vitebsk Strangler is considered the predecessor of another dangerous maniac, Andrei Chikatilo. The atrocities of both are still shocking. Read about how Mosovich managed to hide for 14 years in the book The Murderer by Elizaveta Buta. Sergey Volkov and Alexei Gravitsky wrote about the second one in the book Chikatilo, The Appearance of the Beast. There are many unsolved crimes in the history of criminology, but the following two names truly excite and frighten people to this day. Who is hiding behind the nicknames of Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac remains a mystery. Here is what is known about their crimes.